Okay, welcome everybody to week 3 of the Birding Life 30 Days of Christmas giveaway. It's been really exciting. We had some really great guests on the show. We just want to apologize for the camera quality tonight. We're having a little bit of problem with our webcam, so we'll try and get that resolved before next week. But we just are excited about the content that's going out tonight. We've got a really awesome guest. We just want to ask you now, like this webinar, if you can just click on the share button and help us get the word out of this webinar. Just help us let as many people know as we can. So don't forget also, the Birding Life is a multi-platform site. We've got a website, www.thebirdinglife.com, blog articles on there, equipment reviews, a whole lot of really awesome stuff. We've got a YouTube channel. You can go search for that on YouTube. Really some great videos have gone out there, a couple of location videos. We've got some really awesome stuff coming out in December. And also the podcast. The podcast has just gone live right now, so you can listen after this. Duncan Butchart is this week's guest, and he's going to speak about, just his work as an artist, as a bird artist, as an author, as a birder, just his love for nature as a whole. So we're excited. It's good to have you on the episode. Don't forget tonight, you can ask questions, and we will shoot them out. So tonight, we're excited. We've got a really great guest. One of my favorite birders in South Africa, one of my favorite bird authors. He is, not only that, he's just an awesome person. But tonight we're really excited to welcome our guest, Faansie Peacock. And just as at the end of, as this episode goes out, you can be able to ask as many questions as you want to, and we'll answer as many of them as we can. So Faansie, welcome to the Birding Life webinar.
Thanks, Adam. It's nice to be here. Exciting to chat again.
So we're going to chat and just ask a whole lot of questions. We're going to try not to go over too many things we have gone over in the previous podcast. If you do want to listen to Faansie Peacock's podcast, episode number 3, and I just know in 2021, Faansie, we have to get you on the show for part 2. I know we were speaking about doing an episode on bird calls. We need to get that episode together.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. You and I have several ideas pending. We must get them finalized and get the show running. This has been a crazy year, this 2020. Hopefully next year things will calm down and we can all get down and be a bit more productive.
So, Faansie, we'll start with the C word, COVID-19. When we chatted last time, we were kind of right in the middle of this, probably I think we were in the middle of level 5 lockdown. How have things gone since then? What have you been up to this year, and how has 2020 looked since then?
Honestly, I work from home, so COVID really hasn't affected me that much. I mean, there's this, the normal sort of irritation with the masks and the sanitizers and that, but I don't really have too much to complain about. I've actually been super busy this year. I'm working on a secret project. I mean, we'll make a big announcement once it's ready, but it'll be sort of towards mid-2021. But I've been working on that sort of full time. I really wish that I could just tonight open it up and share with you guys and show you some images in that. But so that's been keeping me busy. Recently, with summer coming on, I've tried to twitch a few of these rarities that are around, very unsuccessfully. I don't know what's going on. I've got a spell of bad luck at the moment, but we'll keep trying, give it another. I've got a friend from Joburg coming down this weekend, so we'll give it another shot. And around at the Surrey Works and the Salt Pans and the whatnot, the sort of places that waders like.
So, Faansie, which is your local birding spot? If you were to go on a normal day, which is your local birding spot?
Well, it really depends how much time I have. I mean, we live on an eco estate, Langebaan country estate, which has still got quite a large portion of undervetted land. So that's pretty awesome if you just want, you've got half an hour to walk around there. We've got 5 species of larks there, southern black coron and black harrier, and sort of typical west coast birds. So those are very nice. And then there's a little dam on the estate here as well, which I've been monitoring quite closely. I mean, it's got herons and flamingos and other sets, but I'm just waiting for like that American purple garnier to pitch up one day. None yet, but yeah, I'll just keep on checking. And then if I've got a little bit more time to spare, I'll either hit West Coast National Park or Veldrift, which both are sort of 20 minutes from my house, so not too bad.
And then, Faansie, a lot of people, when they think of birders, they think of, not to insult anyone who's watching, but they think of an older person sitting in a bird hide or something, and maybe with a cup of coffee or something, and yeah, you're a lot younger than a lot of people think that birders are. Can you tell us, let's just rewind back to the start of your journey. How did this passion for birds start?
Oh, I used to be younger than most birders, but nowadays I'm sort of starting to get on par. But it really started from childhood, and to be honest, I can't really pinpoint a specific moment when it kicked in. Some of my earliest memories are just of birds, and very particular moments. Like I can remember this one moment where we saw a black-crowned night hare in a spotlight. I must have been, my parents tell me I must have been around 5 or 6 years old. But that memory is like ingrained permanently. So somewhere at that age, something must have triggered me. And I've had lots of phases, the dinosaur phase and the airplane phase, and whatever. But birds somehow have stuck, and that's been the one that's been with me for life. And I think it's to do with the fact that it's the right level of stimulation, especially for a kid. It's enough diversity to sort of keep you occupied and keep you interested. It can be a lifelong hobby, but it's not sort of overwhelming. I've recently started getting a little bit more into botany and that. You're talking 6,000 plant species just in the famous biome. And it's way more complicated. Whereas I think birds see that right mark for sort of intellectual stimulation. And having adventures, getting out there, seeing the country, traveling, it's just a great excuse to get out the office.
Etienne Murray did a podcast recently, or a webinar on birding Big Day, and you were part of the team that broke the Gauteng record. It was quite, you speak about getting a bit more mature, let's use that word, because I want you to leave this episode, but you had like a little bit more hair and that kind of thing. You remember that big birding day when you guys smashed I think you smashed the Gauteng record?
Yes, it was 2005, if I'm not mistaken. So we were actually the first Southern African team to get 300. So nowadays I see the guys are getting 325 around there, which is fantastic. But I mean, just hitting that milestone at 300 was an honor. I mean, it's a combination of just meticulous planning. General Murray's, we plan to the minute. We stop at this, the 30.7 kilometers, we stop for 2.5 minutes, and each person looks in their quadrant. And if we haven't seen the target bird after 2.5 minutes, we're in the car and we're gunning it again. It's very meticulous planning. So it's a combination of that, good weather, and just a bit of luck. And everything played in our favor, and we had a fantastic day. 302 species. I think the last one for the day was the African scopsow. It's a fantastic effort, but when was it last weekend, birding Big Day, which we did just around here and around Langebaan with the kids, just for fun. And it doesn't really matter what your title is. At the end of the day, it's about that fun experience of getting up early and listening for night birds, and driving around, and just sort of telling everything you see. You're just as excited about a pine crow, an ostrich, or a hardy-don as you would for any rarity. It's a really fun day. Ours this year was cut in half because my son slammed his finger in the doors, so that was sort of a pause for a few hours. But like I say, it doesn't matter. It's just for fun.
I must say, our nemesis bird this year, we didn't get to see it. Funny enough, was a rattling cisticola. And there was another bird. Another bird we really struggle to see, which is quite common in KZN, is a little bee eater. So it's crazy, like you spoke about. It's not just those special birds. It's also birds that we see are very, very commonly. But the question I want to ask you is this: why all the tough birds? I mean, almost all of the books you've written a book on pipits, you've written a book on LBJs, you've written a book on waders. I mean, why not just stick to the easier birds out there? You've picked all the tough stuff.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess because they are more difficult, they require more sort of insight and more study and a lot of research and reading up and making field notes and that sort of thing. So something along there triggered my interest in those groups specifically. And then, I mean, they might be dull in appearance, but they're definitely not dull in sort of other aspects. I mean, the LBJs include some of the best singers, the warblers and the larks and things that can mimic 50, 60, 80 different species, and you get these long-distance migrations, the waders that completely change their appearance, their diet, their behavior, everything. Half a year, if you think of something like a phalarope, you know, it's a tiny bird, but it lives out on the oceans for 2/3 of its life. It's literally a pelagic wader, that little thing. It's got all these amazing adaptations to its plumage and its build and its diet to survive in those sorts of conditions. I mean, it's just fascinating. So what I'm saying is, they might be difficult to identify and they all look similar in a way, but they're definitely fascinating birds that have been sort of underappreciated. And hopefully my books will change that. You know, I've always tried to not make it purely about ID, but also just about sort of understanding and appreciating the birds.
Faansie, what I'm interested in, if we were to, you know, someone was to go birding with you for a day, you know, I know you obviously have your days, we just got to just normal kind of relaxed birding, but what does a, you know, normal day's birding, because you see a lot in birds that other people don't see. You know, how does birding with Faansie look?
Yeah, it depends. I've got sort of several interests in the sort of wider birding thing. So often I'll leave my binoculars at home and just take my microphone and spend 2-3 hours just trying to record the voice of a specific thing. So I'll go and do little mini missions. Other days I'll go and try and find some nests. If I see that birds are actively breeding, you know, I'll spend time watching them, watching where they're carrying food and nesting material. I'm trying to find as many nests as I can. Other times I'm on the hunt for rarities, so then it's the scope and scanning for hours, standing in one spot. But you know, it's not really a case of going birding. It's sort of, you know, in a way, I am always birding. I'm always looking around. Even while I'm working, occasionally I'll get up and just scan around outside, see if there are any raptors around. So birding sort of becomes part of your life, and it depends what mood you're in that day. It depends on how the day will turn out. I also enjoy birding socially, so you know, it's nice seeing friends and going out on an adventure somewhere in the bush and laughing and chatting and that sort of thing. So different days, different strokes.
Sorry about that, the mouse was not moving. Okay, one of the older books you wrote was your Pipits of Southern Africa, and there's, you know, one of the infamous birds in here, the Kimberley pipit. So since that book has been written, there's obviously many changes in terms of the taxonomy, in terms of pipits and the birds you wrote about. You know, what sort of changes have there been since the Pipits of Southern Africa was written?
So that came out in 2006. It was my last year at university that I did that. So yes, the two birds in there have disappeared, have been deleted off the record permanently. The Kimberley pipit, which was described in 2002, and also just before that the long-tailed pipit, which was described in 96, I think. So there was always some question marks surrounding these birds, and I personally went to some of the sites where they supposedly occur, and I was just never able to find them. You know, people showed me things that they thought might be different, but something just didn't sit right. And then eventually, I worked at the Tsong National Museum of Natural History, the old Transvaal Museum. I worked there for a while, and one of the projects that we got into was investigating this whole thing. So we actually got hold of the type specimens of these birds. You know, when someone describes a new species, they have to collect a holotype. So they have to collect a specimen, place it in a museum or some sort of institution somewhere. And so we actually got hold of the types, including some of the paratypes, sort of backups. And we had a proper look at them, measured them all, and sad to say that there's no, the specimens don't support what is written in the publications about them. So what happened with the Kimberley pipit was that there's a series of type specimens, and sort of half of them were African pipits, and half of them were long-billed pipits. So the whole thing just became sort of jumbled up, which eventually led to the description of completely new species. And with the long-tailed pipit, it turned out to be synonymous with puffy pipit. So, I mean, it's kind of sad in a way, because it was pretty exciting having these two new discoveries, both from Kimberley, and ostensibly one of these birds was also a new endemic. So it's kind of sad that it turned out to be wishful thinking, but that's how we learn the process. I mean, that's science. You make an hypothesis, and someone comes along and disproves you, or you go forward. So that's one of the major changes that occurred with the pipits. And then there have been several new sort of distribution records. A couple of more red-throated pipits have turned out, and golden pipits, and all sorts. But yeah, that book was a long time ago. I don't think I'll do an update. I mean, the one question that I get asked a lot is about my LBJs book. And I might be preempting one of the questions coming my way anyways, but I mean, there's a lot of interest in having a reprint. It's completely sold out. So I'm sort of gauging whether there's scope for a reprint, or whether it might be a good idea to do a second edition in a year or two when I've got a little bit more time in my hands. And then we'll include all these new exciting things like the Upchur's Warbler, which was a new LBJ that should go in a book, and then also delete some of the ones that shouldn't be there.
So Faansie, what are some of the keys in terms of identification when it comes to birds on a very practical level now? So somebody's out in the field and they want to grow in terms of identification. What are some practical keys and compliance, especially in terms of LBJs and waders and that kind of thing? What are some things that people should be looking for out in the field?
Well, the first thing that I would suggest is that you pay less attention to colour, to what the bird's colours are, what its marks are. I mean, firstly, it's more variable than you think. I mean, you've got one picture in your field guide, but that's just a representative of a whole range of variation. So instead of looking at colour, spend a bit more time looking at behaviour and size, shape, and that sort of thing. So they're almost sort of intangible appearance features. So that's my first thing, is sort of become colourblind. Secondly, ears before eyes. You know, we spoke about birding big day. I mean, on those sorts of days, I would say at least 80 to 90% of the birds are identified by sound. So really, pro birders, they've got a very good perception of bird sounds. It's a difficult thing to learn. It's almost like learning a foreign language, but it's all about repetition and practice. So those are sort of general principles that I would recommend. And then also, I mean, there's this big movement nowadays towards bird photography, which is great, and photographs allow us to see a lot more detail than we normally could. But I still feel like it's easier to identify a bird in the field than it is to identify it from a photograph afterwards. I mean, a photograph cannot capture that sort of that impression. I mean, that first instinct was often a critical thing when it comes to bird ID. You have to learn when to trust that instinct and when you might be pushing out of that, passport fever and that sort of thing.
So Faansie, we're going to give you a bit of an LBJ challenge online now. And these birds, we're going to have 5 LBJs, all were photographed in the Cape. We just want to thank Trevor Hodeker for supplying the photos. So Faansie has not seen these photos before this time. We're literally going to, through our great technology, we're going to WhatsApp the pictures to him. And we're going to ask Faansie to identify five LBJs, but he's not just going to identify them, he's also going to explain why he said it was that bird. And the idea behind this is to help those who are watching get some practical skills when it comes to bird identification. So are you ready to go for it, Faansie?
Yes, no pressure,
Okay, so here's bird number 1. Is it sent, Chris? Okay, bird number 1 has been sent. 2 little drab brown numbers in, I don't know where they are, but yeah, so you're going to give it a go.
Sure. Okay, so the first question here is what sort of family, what group are we looking at? I mean, there are various options, but hopefully you'll be able to tell that it's either a pipit or a lark. So these two groups, they're not related, they look very similar because they live in the same environments and so on, but they're actually not related at all. So whether it's a pipit or a lark, there are some technical differences. Larks have 2 rows of scapular feathers and all sorts of little technical things, but the easy thing to remember is that pipits are related to wagtails. So they've got that same sort of slim delicacy about them, you know, with the head pumping back and forth when they walk and the tails wagging, as you would expect, and that slimness and the thin, delicate bills. Whereas larks are much more robust birds, you know, that they've thick-set, short tails and strong bills. Also, the pipits are insect eaters, so they've got these fine, delicate bills, whereas many of the larks are seed eaters or omnivores, so they typically have much thicker, more robust bills. So, what would you say this is? To me, this has got the slimness and the wagtail footages. So these are pipits. So what makes this image particularly interesting is how different these two birds look. I mean, you see they've got a similar size and a similar shape, but plumage-wise they're quite different. And even the you know, the bare parts, the legs are different colors. The one on the left's got pink legs, the other one's got orange legs. The base of the bill is different. And then the darkness of the markings. You see this one on the left got the dark chest streaks and the almost black crown and so on. So what's going on here is these are African pipits, but the one on the left is a juvenile that sort of recently left the nest. In fact, it seems like the adults are still feeding it. So a fairly young bird, maybe 6 weeks old or something like that. So the juveniles look completely different to the adults. So you can see this adult on the right, that's actually in worn plumage. So typically birds molt their plumage after they've bred. So during breeding, they've got, you know, they've got enough going, they've got enough on their plate, so the feathers sort of wear away, and then once winter comes, they do molt, which is energetically costly, so they grow new feathers. So anyway, so what I'm saying is this bird on the right, the adult, is in worn plumage, so it's very pale, it's bleached from the sunlight, the streaks are very thin. It's got some white edges on the wing there, so that's a worn adult African pipit, and then the one on the left is the juvenile, which has got very fresh feathers. I mean, it's fresh out of the nest. All the feathers are the same age, there's no molt contrast. So yeah. Okay, are you happy with that?
Well done. 1 out of 5. Back to my camera. So just also interesting, you know, you spoke about just behavior, and we'll go to the next LBJ now, but I remember, you know, reading in your waders book, and you spoke about the common sandpiper. I'd also Bob just tell about, and you know, just that behavioral thing, and obviously there's other features that go with it, but spoke about just, you know, the behavior around the bird, and it's just interesting, you know, how it does play a part also in terms of the, you know, helping identify different species.
Absolutely. I mean, like these pipits, we didn't really go into details about how they look, you know, markings and that. It's really nice. Just getting the shape and stuff. Statistically, if you said it's an African pipit, you'd probably be right, because 90% more common than any.
Yeah, so this is why we tell people to share this webinar. This is really great stuff. And we're going to go to the next one. So 1 out of 5. Chris is keeping score. Let's see if Faansie can get 5 out of 5. The next one is nemesis bird of many. So let's go for it.
Right, so another LBJ. Can't see much of the habitat here, although the blue does suggest one of the warblers. So stickler would have been an option, but the sticklers have slightly curved straight beak. One of the warblers. Now it gets tricky. Warblers' voice is by far the easiest. In fact, in some species, pretty much the only way. This bird, though, has got very strong legs, quite dark legs, like a fairly bulky. Got the white underparts, long white eyebrow. My best guess was this is swamp warbler. Typically, the most frequently encountered one of these. Normally, the introduction warblers, you'll see them hopping about in the open. I mean, they always keep close to reef cover. Sometimes they go out onto floating. Very beautiful liquid song that sort of just seems to fit in. I mean, if we could see the wing from the side, the profile, we would have been able to see quite a short wing. So this is not a migratory warbler. A lot of the warblers migrate all the way to the northern hemisphere, in Europe and Asia, come in winter in the non-breeding guys breed locally. In fact, I found a nest of one just down on their cycle. So they breed here, so they don't need the long wings for long distance migration. But a much shorter, rounder wing. So that's what the bird wingers use when they catch them in mist nets. You sort of open the wing and you compare different lengths of the primary feathers, and you can tell which species it is. And I think you might be able to see that one little feather sticking out there on the right hand side of the wing. That's the P10, the outermost primary. So that's typically it contributes to that round shape of the wing in this swamp ball.
Yeah, so Rashid, yeah, 2 out of 2, well done. You know, unfortunately, it's not like money going for this or anything, but well done, 2 out of 2. So, yeah, if there's any reason for, I think he was saying, Christy Warner was saying, I think someone said he needs to do a 2nd edition. So, yeah, the LBJ book. So, if there's any reason you get the book when it comes to the 2nd edition, this is the reason. So, 2 out of 2, let's go for the 3rd one. This is the bird I've never seen. These are all photographed of the Western Cape, so let's go for number 3. Here we go.
Okay, another LBJ, pretty featureless. I mean, not much in terms of markings, it looks pretty plain. What can we see here? It's got long legs, so what does that suggest? It suggests that it's a ground living thing, partly a terrestrial bird. It's got a typical sea eater-like bill, not sea eaters, insect eater type bill, similar to that pivot that we spoke about earlier. You can also see there's a little bit of white on the outer half feathers there. Otherwise, it's weird sort of blue-grey colour, slightly dark cheeks. So this is a pretty nondescript bird. Again, this is in worn plumage. You can see that it's got that sort of sun-bleached effect to it, and sort of frayed feather edges and that. So I would guess it's just also photographed in summer sometime. So this guy is a Karoo chat. It's one of the endemics. I'm a little bit surprised if you haven't seen one. I mean, because they're actually one of the more common Karoo birds. You can often see them when you're driving on the N1 and you see them on the fence posts. A little bit of a nondescript thing, and it also doesn't really have a very arresting call that makes it sort of mellow, chirpy notes, but it's pretty quiet. So when it comes to these chats, the main thing to look for is the tail pattern. You can't really see much of it from this angle, but if the tail is spread and you looked at it from either the underside or the other side, you can see quite a bit of white on the sides coming down, sort of pipit-like shape. The behaviour, though, would be quite different to something like a pipit or a rock, because it wouldn't run around on the ground. It would typically sit on some sort of perch, usually about a metre above the ground, a fence post or a termite mound or telephone pole or something like that. And it would watch the ground for prey and then fly down, maybe do 2 or 3 hops, grab an insect, and then classically with these chats is that they flip their wings sort of 2 or 3 times and often lift their tails slightly. But these little behavioural clues that are, I mean, they're dead giveaways. They're very easy if you know what to look for. So that's a Karoo chat. So they're 3 chats that look very similar. And I must admit that sometimes they're bloody difficult. You know, I sort of, eventually I'll just give up and drive away and look for a more cooperative one. Sickle wing chat, track chat, and Karoo chat. Yeah.
So 3 out of 3. Well done, Faansie. Really, really awesome. You're rocking this here. So let's go to the next one. So this is number 4. So let's see if we can do it. So let's go for it. Go.
Okay, so earlier we spoke about the difference between warblers and cisticolas, and we said that cisticolas have a slightly curved bill. So you can see it quite clearly here that the bill isn't straight, it's got that slight D curve to it. And then also just a general sort of streakiness of the thing. And we also said earlier that that lesser swamp warbler is not a migratory bird, so it's got a short wing. And it's the same thing here. So you can see this bird's got a very short, rounded wing. It's not a strong flyer. As you know, these cisticolas, they sort of just flutter a little bit. I mean, some of them have these high-altitude display flights, but they're not built for migrating long distances. So they're resident birds. So this is one of the cisticolas. Now it gets tricky. I mean, with cisticolas, again, if you look at the distribution and the habitat, you can pretty much make a call just based on that. So you don't have to worry that much about what it looks like. Adam, you said this is photographed in the Western Cape. This is actually one of my garden birds. This is a grey-backed cisticola. It's one of the passerines that's very common here in the strandveld vegetation around here. A little bit of rufous on the crown, rufous wing feathers, rufous tail. That's typical of cisticolas, and then this sort of grey streakiness, a very unkempt, scraggly-looking bird. Also, cisticolas spend a lot of time on the ground, so their plumage quickly becomes worn and frayed, especially the tail feathers. But again, call, habitat distribution would sort this out for you easily. It's much more difficult to do straight from a photograph without any sort of context like this. In the field, you would have, the context, what it sounds like, its size, the shape, behavior, display flights, habitat distribution. all of that. But yeah, that's my calls going back to Stickler.
And that'll give you 4 out of 4. I need to come down to the Cape. There's some really cool birds on there. I need to come to a Cape visit and come see some of these birds. So let's see if you can get it 5 out of 5. Here's the last one. Let's go for it. There we go. Nice chunky bird there.
Very chunky, exactly. So we're back in the pipits and larks debate. So remember we said pipits are related to wagtails. So they've got that slimness and that delicacy, whereas this bird, you cannot describe this as delicate in any way. This is a large, robust, chunky looking thing. You can see it's got a strong body, it's got a strong, thick neck, a heavy bill. So this is definitely a lark and not one of the pipits. So with this guy, which is again one of my local patch species here, there's an easy giveaway, and it's the only lark with yellow on its bill. See that yellow at the base of the bill. So this is a large-billed lark. It used to be called thick-billed lark, but the name changed because there's another species in the Middle East that's also called thick-billed lark. So ours is now a large-billed lark. Yeah, it's pretty much the most common lark around here. They've got this beautiful, what they call it, a squeaky gate song. It's like this, I mean, I can't imitate it, but it sounds like a rusty gate that slowly opens with this short, sweet little sequence. But that being said, I mean, they also do all sorts of other vocal gymnastics. They imitate other birds, and they have these continuous display flights high up and those sorts of things. But this is a large-billed lark with the yellow bill, very thick bill, heavy dark markings all over. Yeah, so that's my final call, is large-billed lark.
So Faansie, you got 5 out of 5 for the LBJ challenge. Well done. That was flipping insane. Well done.
Thanks, Adam. No, it's mercifully not too difficult. You could have given me some horrid little testiculars or warblers or things, but yeah.
Okay, just before we end off tonight, one of the things that we were speaking about our Christmas list, and one of the things that I think should have been on that list, I don't know how it didn't land up on the list, and we might still try and sneak it at the end of the list, was your children's, your kids' bird book, Faansie's Kids' Bird Book. What an amazing, amazing book. You know, we were chatting about with a couple of people, and I think when it comes to bird identifications, it's not just one of those books that's for kids. I think even for adults who are starting off birding, and even those who are experienced, I just think it's an amazing book to get your hands on. And can you just tell us a little bit about how the kids' field guide came into existence?
Sure, yes. I mean, I've got two young boys, they're 7 and 5, so that's sort of where my mindset is now, is trying to engage them with nature and birds and sort of simplifying things, because there's always this trend of field guides to become more complex, more complicated, more detailed, and add more illustrations, so things become sort of overwhelming. So what I wanted to do is just distill everything to the very basic essence. And the whole thing actually started, the idea of it started on that flock at sea, that boat trip, where my wife now, she asked me to sort of help her just recap some of the seabirds before we go out on the voyage. And I ended up drawing these little cartoons. They're literally like little cartoons, where all the birds have got the same shape, and just the colors are slightly different. It's sort of very, very simplified things. And from there, the project grew. I mean, it changed a little bit in that I redid a lot of the earlier work to make it more accurate and so on. But yeah, then eventually it ended up being a full entire field guide to all the birds of South Africa. It's got 720 species. I mean, that's more than enough to get on with. But like I said earlier, also it was important to me to make it fun. So it's got minimal text. In fact, the only text that it does have is the annotations on the plates. So everything you need to know is right there on the picture. There's no long, paragraphs that you need to read or anything like that. And then because it was for kids, I also built in lots of little games and hide and seek challenges and that. And one of the most satisfying things is that there's a little space on the plate itself, a little circle, which you can color in when you've seen the bird, or you can put a sticker there or whatever you like. So you sort of build your book as you progress. So I'm very happy with it, and I must be honest, it's by far the most successful book that I've done. It was also the easiest. It was a year. It was a hard year, but I mean, all the other books have taken many years of research. This was a pretty quick project, but I'm very proud of it. I mean, it's had a fantastic reception, and now the last few weeks we've just been inundated with sales. So we're now has to run to the postnet, 3-4 times a day for the Christmas rush. But I'm very happy, and I get these reviews by kids that write me little handwritten letters that says that say, Wilma, go buy this in your book, and that sort of means so much to me that it means a lot more to me than some professional ornithologist reviewing it. And I can tell that it's actually encouraged the love of birds and of nature in general in young minds, which is fantastic.
So we should say tonight, ons praat met Wim Faansie.
Yeah.
That's my best case of it in English. But just, I was telling you just before we came, we were on air, that I had one of these books and I actually ended up giving it to one of the guys who joined the bird club, one of the young guys who joined the bird club. And I remember there was if I remember correctly, there's this checklist in the book where it's almost like the birds have different scores and that kind of thing. And it makes it a bit of fun, it's not just like this normal kind of checklist, the harder to see birds that kind of have a higher scorecard. Am I remembering correctly?
Yes, there's this challenge, I think I call it the Bird Nerd Challenge, where you get more points for rare birds, and then there are also some bonus things like endemics count double, and there are also all these little rules, and eventually get the score out of 2,000, I think was the total. So it feels a bit more fair that you get a bigger mark for a rarity. And then there's 20 trophy birds that have now become, my kids are just obsessed with seeing these trophy birds. The really special things like an arena trogon or a battle, things like that, mottled crane, blue swallow, these sorts of mega birds. And for them you get 20 points, so these trophy birds. So yeah, but that's only one of the games that's built into the thing. It's all about making birding fun, making it accessible.
You need to do another KZN trip, Faansie, can take you to get some of those awesome species. Just the last question I want to ask is in terms of, for those who are watching who maybe have kids or nephews or nieces or something and they want to take them out birding, how do you feel people can make birding accessible for younger kids as they take them out? Because, like we spoke about LBJs and that, it can be quite intimidating. How can we make it accessible for kids to get into this awesome hobby?
Yeah, I mean, LBJs and waders, that's not everyone's cup of tea. Even for adults, that's boring. So, I mean, for kids, you have to baby steps, and you have to start them with little things. What often works well is if you identify a target beforehand, and I would suggest choosing something that's pretty or impressive, but that's common, that you sort of guarantee to see. And once you see it, you make a big fuss out of it, and you celebrate. And, so that sort of builds up that expectation. Because for a kid, they don't care that it's some lost vagrant from America. If it's got a long tail or bright colors, it's much better. So just start them slowly with these sorts of things. But then also, we shouldn't underestimate kids. Their senses are incredibly sharp, and their brains just assimilate information like crazy. So they're often naturally very good birders. And like I said right in the beginning, I think this is a perfect level of stimulation for them. But I mean, they're also children, so you can't expect them to sit still for hours in a hide. Or, they want to run and climb trees and throw rocks. That's just boys being boys.
So Faansie, if people want to get their hands on this kid's book, and like I said, I think this is one of the perfect Christmas gifts out there. How can they order the book?
The book should be in local bookstores, but alternatively you can order them directly from me, just through the website FaansiePeacock.com, the order form and a credit card thing and so on. And then I'll sign the book for you and we courier it, and it's there within a day or two. So yeah, like I said, the LBJs book unfortunately out of stock, but we've still got the waders book and the kids book.
And then what we'll do tomorrow is just to help people. We will put an advert on tomorrow, and also with just a link about where they can get the book. So just to make it really easy, go onto the Birding Life tomorrow. We'll have a nice image with the cover of the book, and there'll be a link as to how you can order the book. So yeah, just go have a look on the Burning Life tomorrow, and we'll make it super easy for you. But yeah, I don't even not for the kids in your life. If you get it for yourself, buy one for other people. This is really an awesome book, and I really encourage everyone who's watching, get your hands on this book. It's one of the best bird books you're going to get. The last thing I remember was all these little, at the bottom of every page, all this little information about birds, and that it's one of my favorite field guides I've encountered. So Faansie, it's been so good to chat to you now. Thanks for being on the show, and I'm looking forward to that podcast next year.
Thanks, Adam. It's always fun chatting. I'll hope to chat to you soon again.
Chat to you. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Okay. Cheers. Bye.